The summons arrived while I was arguing with a food synthesizer that insisted fermented algae paste was emotionally appropriate for my dietary profile. I told it my emotions were private and none of its business, and it responded by flashing a calming blue light that made me feel judged. That was when the wall beside me unfolded itself and politely informed me that Her Radiance, the alien queen, requested my immediate presence. Not demanded, requested, which was worse. I stared at the wall for a long time, hoping it would change its mind or reveal it was part of an elaborate prank show watched by bored aristocrats. It did neither. The synthesizer helpfully offered a farewell beverage, something warm and ominously purple. I declined on the grounds that I might be executed shortly and didn't want to die with a suspicious stain on my shirt. I knew exactly why the Queen was calling me. Everyone always knows why the Queen is calling them. The universe has a way of clarifying priorities when a near-immortal sovereign with a telepathic intelligence network wants a word. Somewhere deep inside the Citadel, something had finally connected the dots I had spent months carefully smudging. I tried not to think of her as I followed the corridor as it reshaped itself around my footsteps. That didn't work. She slipped into my thoughts anyway, as she always did, uninvited and smiling. She looked human enough that my brain could relax around her, but different in the ways that mattered. The long ears that curved back from her temples, expressive and alive, flicking when she was amused and flattening slightly when she was pretending not to be nervous. She had once joked that they made lying difficult, which was unfair considering how bad I already was at it. The Citadel hummed softly, a sound that never quite resolved into silence. Gravity adjusted itself every few meters, keeping things interesting for visitors and mildly annoying for residents. I'd learned to walk with a subtle sway, like someone permanently compensating for a mild hangover. I told people it was a human cultural thing. They nodded politely and added it to their databases. As I moved closer to the inner levels, security constructs drifted past, all smooth surfaces and unreadable intentions. One of them paused, scanned me, and chirped cheerfully. "Good luck," it said, which felt unnecessary. I tried to rehearse what I would say. That failed too. My internal monologue kept derailing into increasingly unhelpful strategies, like fainting dramatically or claiming I was actually three smaller humans in a coat, and this was all a misunderstanding. None of these had a high probability of survival. The Queen's chamber opened without ceremony, which somehow made it worse. The air shifted. My thoughts felt heavier, as if the room itself had opinions about them. I stepped forward and resisted the urge to wave awkwardly. She was already there. Of course she was. The alien queen didn't enter rooms. Rooms reached a consensus around her existence. Her presence pressed gently but firmly against my mind, not painful, just thorough. I had the distinct sensation that if I thought about cheese too loudly she would know. "You took your time," she said, and her voice carried amusement layered over authority like a blade wrapped in silk. "I stopped to argue with a wall," I said before I could stop myself. "I lost." A pause. Then faintly a ripple of something that might have been a laugh, or the room recalibrating. It was hard to tell with her. "You know why you are here," she said. "Yes," I said. Then, because my survival instincts occasionally took coffee breaks, I added, "statistically speaking." Her attention sharpened. I felt it like a hand adjusting a lens. "You have formed an attachment," she said, not a question. "A prohibited one." I considered denial. It briefly considered me back and rejected the idea. "In my defense," I said, "it started very accidentally." Her gaze held mine. I had the unsettling impression she could see the exact moment my life had gone off script. "There are no accidents of this magnitude," she said. She lifted a hand, and the air between us shimmered. Images flickered, corridors, shadows, stolen conversations, laughter carefully muffled. Her, always her. The way her ears betrayed her mood even when her face stayed composed. The way she mocked the Empire's obsession with order by existing messily, joyfully. "You are aware," the Queen continued, that such bonds destabilize structures we have maintained for millennia. Yes, I said, but in my defense again, the structures are kind of brittle. Another pause, this one longer, dangerous. Then, unexpectedly, she sighed. It was a very controlled sigh, the kind perfected by beings who rarely needed to express frustration. Humans, she said, are remarkably consistent. Thank you. You form attachments under impossible circumstances, she said. You joke when afraid. You confuse defiance with charm. I can multitask, I said. The pressure in the room eased slightly. Not gone, but reduced, like a weapon lowered a fraction. Tell me, she said, do you believe this bond makes you disloyal? I thought of her again, really thought of her this time, of the way she leaned closer when telling secrets, ears brushing back, voice conspiratorial. No, I said, I think it makes me honest. Silence stretched. Somewhere, a system recalibrated. The Queen studied me with an expression that suggested I was both a problem and an interesting experiment. You amuse me, she said at last. That may be your greatest danger. That's what my last supervisor said, I replied. The Queen rose and the room shifted with her, responsive and alert. This matter is not concluded, she said. Your presence here is merely the beginning. My stomach dropped. Beginnings were rarely good news. As I was dismissed, escorted back by corridors that pretended not to listen, one thought echoed louder than the others. She knew. She had always known. And somehow, impossibly, I was still breathing. When I finally reached the outer levels, my communicator pulsed once. A single message, no sender ID. You still alive? I smiled despite myself. Barely. But yes. I didn't sleep after the summons. Mostly because sleep pods on the Citadel had a habit of replaying your most stressful memories as dream optimization. I didn't need help remembering the Queen's eyes or the way the room had listened to every thought I tried not to think. I lay there staring at the ceiling as it slowly cycled through legally approved soothing geometries, wondering if this was the point in my life where everything collapsed dramatically or just became inconvenient forever. My communicator pulsed again. Still alive. I waited a full 10 seconds before replying just to build character, or suspense, or spite. Barely. A pause. Then, that's my favorite state for you. I snorted, which the sleep pod interpreted as emotional distress, and responded by releasing a calming scent that smelled suspiciously like burnt citrus. I disabled it manually. The pod sulked. She met me 2 levels down in a maintenance transit tube that no one important ever used, which was exactly why we liked it. The tube was narrow, dim, and humming with old power lines that hadn't been upgraded because they still worked well enough, and no one wanted to admit they didn't fully understand them anymore. She was already there, leaning against the curved wall, arms folded, long ears angled back in exaggerated patience. When she saw me, they flicked forward, betraying her relief. You took your time, she said. I was emotionally processing, I said, and fighting a bed. That tracks. She stepped closer, close enough that the hum of the tube felt louder, closer enough that I had to remind myself not to reach for her like this was a normal place and time. Her ears twitched again, and she smiled like she knew exactly what I was thinking and was enjoying my internal struggle. So, she said lightly, did the Queen dissolve you into quantum regret? Not yet, I said. But she did say I amuse her, which feels like the kind of thing that ends badly. Her smile faded just a fraction. She knows, she said. Yes. How much? All of it, I think, or enough that the remaining details are decorative. She sighed and leaned her head back against the wall. One ear flattened completely, the other stayed half upright, indecisive. I told you this would happen. I know. In my defense, I am very bad at stopping when told not to. She laughed quietly, then stopped herself, glancing at the walls as if they might tattle. We shouldn't be joking. We absolutely should, I said. If we stop joking, that's when they win. That's not how empires fall, she said. It's how I fall, I said, usually into bad decisions. She studied me for a long moment. She didn't punish you. No, She didn't threaten you, only spiritually. Her ears angled forward again. Then she's thinking. That's worse, right? Yes. We stood there in silence, the kind that only works when you're used to each other. The tube vibrated as a cargo platform passed somewhere far above us, the sound traveling through layers of ancient metal and newer alloys, through systems stacked on systems. She's going to make this political, she said. Everything is political with her, I said. Even silence. She'll test you, she said. She'll test me. I grimaced. I really don't like tests. They always have trick questions. Her mouth curved. You are the trick question. I took that in. It felt uncomfortably accurate. Over the next cycles, the Citadel changed around us in subtle ways. Access permissions lagged. Corridors rerouted more often. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms and resumed slightly offbeat when I left, like a badly edited recording. I was invited to meetings I shouldn't have been invited to, then uninvited with polite apologies that felt rehearsed. She noticed too. Of course she did. Her ears caught things before words did. They're watching you, she said one cycle later, as we shared an illicit meal composed mostly of things neither of us could properly digest. They've always been watching me, I said. They just used to pretend it was for my own good. She smiled faintly. You humans have an impressive tolerance for surveillance. We call it optimism, I said, or denial. It's a thin line. The Queen summoned me again, not directly this time, but through layers of protocol and intermediaries that all insisted this was a routine consultation. Nothing routine ever required 3 biometric confirmations and a waiver acknowledging existential risk. This time, the chamber felt different, not heavier, quieter, like something had already been decided and was waiting to see if I would catch up. You continue your bond, the Queen said, conversationally. Yes, I said, equally conversationally, because apparently I had decided this was how I wanted to die. You do so knowing it destabilizes social harmonics. Yes. You do so knowing it places her at risk. I hesitated. I don't like that part. Her attention sharpened again. And yet you persist. I do. She regarded me for a long moment. I had the strange impression she wasn't only looking at me but through me at something behind me, something older. Do you know why such bonds are forbidden? She asked. Officially, I said, or the real reason? The real one, she said. Because they can't be controlled, I said. Because they create loyalties that don't map neatly onto hierarchies. Because they remind people they're individuals. A flicker of something crossed her expression. Regret maybe, or memory. You speak as though this were a virtue, she said. I speak as someone in love, I said. We're notoriously biased. Silence again. Then unexpectedly she smiled. Not much, just enough. Then we will see, she said. See what I didn't know. But when I left the chamber, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. This wasn't about punishment. It was about pressure. And pressure, as any good science fiction story knows, either crushes you or turns you into something new. By the time the final summons came, everyone was pretending it wasn't final, which is how you know it absolutely was. The message arrived without intermediaries, without soothing language, without options. It didn't even bother to apologize. It simply informed me that my presence was required in the central chamber, effective immediately, and that refusal would be interpreted as a philosophical statement rather than a practical choice. The Citadel, apparently, had decided we were past pleasantries. She found me before I could find her, stepping out of a side corridor that shouldn't have existed until it did. Her ears were angled back, not flat, not alert, just ready. That alone told me everything had already moved too far to be stopped. So, she said, falling into step beside me, this feels dramatic. That's because it is, I said. I checked twice. You're not shaking, she observed. I'm shaking on the inside, I said. I outsourced it, more efficient. She huffed a quiet laugh, then reached for my hand without looking at it. We didn't lace fingers. That would have been sentimental. Instead, we pressed our palms together briefly, a small human-alien compromise that said everything we weren't allowed to say out loud. "They're going to make an example," she said. "Of me." "Of us," she corrected. "Rude," I said. "I hate being pluralized by authority." The chamber was already awake when we entered. Awake wasn't the right word, but it was the closest human one. Systems whispered to each other. Fields aligned. Probability itself felt slightly tilted, like the universe was leaning in to listen. The Queen stood at the center, as always, as if centers were concepts invented specifically for her convenience. "You have both chosen to attend," she said. "You invited us," I said. She regarded me. "You could have run." "I trip under pressure," I said. "It's a known flaw." Her gaze shifted to her, softened just a fraction. "You understand the implications of your bond," the Queen said. "Yes," she replied calmly, too calmly. Her ears twitched once sharply. "And I accept them." A ripple passed through the chamber, not sound, reaction. "You accept risk," the Queen said. "I accept meaning," she said. "They are often confused." I glanced at her, then back at the Queen. "For what it's worth," I said, "this was never about rebellion. I'm not organized enough for that." "Intent is irrelevant," the Queen said. "Impact is not." She raised her hand, and the chamber responded. Light folded in on itself. Data bled into sensation. I felt histories brushing against my thoughts, old laws, older fears, entire civilizations arranged carefully to avoid exactly this kind of unpredictability. "You are not the first," the Queen said. "You will not be the last. Bonds like yours emerge cyclically. They are inconvenient." "Inconvenient how?" I asked. "They force choice," she said. "They expose the illusion of inevitability." "That does sound annoying," I said. Her lips curved despite herself. "You reduce everything to humor." "It's a coping mechanism," I said. "Very advanced. Humans have been refining it for centuries." The Queen gestured, and suddenly the chamber was no longer just a chamber. It was a node, a convergence, a place where decisions propagated outward into systems and laws and lives. "Your bond has reached a threshold," she said. "Left unresolved, it will fracture compliance matrices across multiple sectors." So I said, "No pressure." "There will be resolution," she said, "one way or another." She turned to her. "You will be offered separation, reassignment, memory attenuation if desired." My chest tightened. "And you," the Queen said, turning back to me, "will be permitted to remain, unburdened by attachments that compromise function." Silence, her ears flattened fully now. She didn't look at me. "No," she said, the word landed cleanly. "No embellishment, no apology." The Queen's gaze sharpened. "You refuse." "Yes." I swallowed. "So do I." The chamber reacted more strongly this time. Systems spiked. Probability wobbled. "You would destabilize an empire," the Queen said. "Empires are famously stable until they're not," I said. "I read a book once." The Queen studied us for a long time. Long enough that my fear circled back around into something steadier. Long enough that I realized this wasn't a trial. It was a calculation. "Tell me," she said finally, "what do you believe comes next?" I thought about it, really thought. About who I'd been when I arrived here, careful and small and convinced survival meant not making waves. About who I was now, standing in the center of something vast, holding a line I hadn't known I was capable of holding. "I think," I said slowly, "that you already know you can't erase this without consequences worse than adaptation." A pause. "And I think," I continued, "that you're trying to decide whether control is worth more than evolution." The Queen's expression shifted. Something ancient moved behind her eyes. "Love," she said softly, "is a variable we have never successfully modeled." "Have you tried asking it what it wants?" I asked. Her gaze snapped to me. I shrugged. "Worth a shot." Silence again. Then the Queen did something no one expected. She laughed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't warm, but it was real. "Very well," she said. "We will not erase you." Relief surged through me, sharp enough to hurt. "Instead," she continued, "we will observe." Her ears lifted slightly. "Observe what?" "Change," the Queen said. "Your bond will stand publicly. The chamber stilled. "You will become precedent," the queen said, "a living contradiction. Proof that loyalty need not be singular." "And if it all falls apart?" I asked. "Then," the queen said, "we will adapt again, as we always have." The pressure lifted, not vanished, lifted. We were dismissed without ceremony. Later, much later, when the citadel had settled into a new configuration that included us instead of hiding us, we stood at a viewport